We all love superheroes, paragons of what is good, what is righteous, and they are very aspirational. But every now and then, a superhero breaks bad. They lose it, they turn to the dark side, whether they've got good reasons or not, and sometimes that can make the best villains. So, we're going to talk about why that idea of superheroes breaking bad can be so tantalizing, and some of the examples of where it's gone really well. Before we get into any examples, I think the reason why it works out so well is because you got to remember that comics are soap opera. Comics are drama. Comics are ongoing stories that never end. And after a while, if the only people that you see getting beaten up are clearly bad guys, and the only people you see win are clearly good guys, things can get boring. You've got to shuffle the deck around every now and then. So, like, to me, when you can have a character who everybody really loves, like Iron Man, do something that is kind of screwed up, at least in the eyes of the audience, now we've got a compelling villain. And I'm thinking about Iron Man during and post Civil War. He wasn't necessarily presented as a mustache twirling villain, but he was not a good guy. He wasn't a great guy. And if you were on the side of Cap and the vigilante heroes, you were definitely anti Iron Man, but he had a good point.
And that's continued in his character throughout that potential to be morally gray, which I think makes Tony interesting. You know, there was the whole Hickman era of Avengers, where the new Avengers run dealt with a lot of morally gray heroes that had to deal with ideas and decisions that maybe a supervillain would probably be more equipped to handle. The idea of having to wipe out an entire universe to save ours is
Mm.
compelling to have a hero have to come across that.
I think also it makes, the fall more tragic. When you have those sharp contrasts, it allows for you to be able to say, "Oh my God, this is what they were, what they stood for, who they were," but they've gone to this point. They've been driven so low, right? And so the disparity between that becomes greater.
The one that I think of when you mentioned that, Marco, is Ultimate Reed Richards. Ultimate Reed Richards was a hero. There was the Ultimate Fantastic Four. They did typical Fantastic Four things, and they were superheroes doing it. But that Reed wanted to propose to Sue Storm. Things did not work out, and he crashed out and became the Maker, which is probably the one of the scarier modern supervillains of our time in comics, where he's kind of transcended his own book and universe and is like a villain for the Marvel universe going forward, an integral part of Secret Wars and what the Ultimate Universe currently is, and probably one of the more horrifying villains from something that was so Reed Richards, family man, good guy, to pure monster who might somehow be immortal is fascinating and probably one of my favorite villains to be around in Marvel Comics.
Well, you bring up the Maker, and it's only proving my point that these kinds of characters have a lot of they get a lot of attention because the Maker has been all over social media. People love this character because they see, wow, this used to be Reed Richards. This is Reed Richards. But what happened to him? And for me, as somebody who has been reading stories about that version of Reed for 20 years, to be at this point, it's like it validates the idea of long form storytelling, but it's also so cool to see somebody you loved become somebody you love to hate. They go down that road with characters like the Hulk too. One of the greatest villains to me is the Maestro, and he's just a version of the Hulk who got really old and doesn't give a damn, and is willing to do whatever he needs to do for control. And it's an interesting flip on a character who typically is presented as having no control. The idea of the Hulk is a character out of control, but the Maestro is physically a Hulk, but he is in control of his thoughts and actions, and he chooses to do screwed up things with horrific results for our heroes. There is a great story that features the Maestro. It was done by George Perez. I'm whiffing on the name right now.
Future Imperfect.
Future Imperfect. We actually did a book club on it. And it's a fantastic story that shows just how dangerous a smart, evil Hulk can be.
I think of Jean Grey, and in this case, the Phoenix, taking her and literally destroying planets, billions of people, and in the context of that run, that it's a tragedy to not only the X-Men as a whole, but to Scott, right? And to see the downfall of this character, who in the greater context of X-Men, grew up as a kid alongside a lot of these people and alongside Professor X, and ultimately, turned to succumbed to this overwhelming force.
And again, you talk about this type of thing adding meaningfully to the characters. Um, each one of those characters has had their mainline version impacted by this stuff. Jean is forever altered by her encounter with the Phoenix. Iron Man is a richer character for all of that. I think when you talk about New Avengers, we saw darker aspects of each of those characters, from Reed to Doctor Strange, that make you think of them differently if you continue to read their stories.
Another tie-ins in New Avengers. The Submariner, Namor, however you want to pronounce him or name him, was a World War II hero. He was one of Cap's buddies with the Defenders, and throughout the ongoing start of Marvel Comics, was a superhero. Poot sort of turns. And Namor never really becomes a full-on villain. He's always in that gray area. Unless you're from Wakanda, then he's probably a villain to you. Um, but he does things that are heinous. He flooded Wakanda in a war with the Black Panther. Probably, I guess committing genocide is probably a villainous thing to do. Now that I think about it. And if you're Reed Richards, you probably think Namor is a villain as well, the way he rizzed up his wife. Um, so I always find Namor to be compelling as hell and a really fun character because he's not used often, but when he is, they get to play with that like super powerful, can be a hero whenever, but chooses to be a little morally different.
What do you guys think is more interesting to you, when a hero goes bad or when a villain turns good?
I think when a hero goes bad, like the villain, I feel like especially if they start off as a villain, right? You have to really make up for they're uh why are they paying back? How are they making up for their deeds? And I think that's a harder sell sometimes. It's harder to buy than it is a downfall.
See, I'm the opposite. I actually find villain becoming heroic more interesting because it usually sticks longer. Like especially when I think about DC, whenever they want to do like hero goes bad, it's in an Elseworlds or it's Dark Knight's Metal, where it's just different versions of that character who is bad. Um, so it's like those characters can never fully be bad. So I don't really. I get wary about the longevity of a switch like that. But something like Magneto turning heroic is something that's pretty much stuck for a good chunk of time, and it'll probably will stick going forward. And I find that compelling. Um, but I just think DC is a weirder spot for this dynamic. I think all of our examples were Marvel.
Yeah, I think DC has had less success. Hal Jordan as Parallax didn't go over great. Wally West from Heroes in Crisis, that didn't go over great. So, of course, you could say characters like Jason Todd, but he's
Oh,
a hero right now, so that didn't last very long. But to me, I really enjoy when heroes go bad because it's easier to believe. I think, like Marco said, I also think that when they do eventually turn back, if it was done well, it'll be additive to the character. I think villains lose something when they become heroes because they weren't designed to be that way, and it's very often doesn't feel earned. that they would be accepted back by the people that they had done so wrong, like Magneto killing thousands of people. Welcome right back into the fold. It's hard for me to accept.
Yet Namor has to still have some stank on his name when everyone mentions him.
Ooh.
There's a genocidal double standard, apparently.
Yeah, I guess so, right? But did we miss any examples? Can you think of any that we should have named? I'm trying to end things.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I had one, but I just because I'm a Chasm fan. Never mind. Keep going.
Thank you. Um, Let us know in the comments if we missed any. Let us know which you prefer. Do you prefer heroes going bad or villains going good? Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.